Houston, we see you on a stereo.
Conspiracy, lies, truth, helping you understand the lies of the world and see the truth of the Bible. Welcome to Celebrate Truth with your hosts, Robbie Davidson and Pastor Nate.
Hey, it's Celebrate Truth Radio. Wow, this is going to be an exciting one. I'm here live with Pastor Nate Wolfe, my co-host, in person. We've done this one other time before, Nate.
Yeah, this is exciting. I always love to be in person with Robbie D. And we are broadcasting from Vermilion, Ohio, Take on the World 19 conference.
It's been incredible. What would you say so far? I mean, we're at, day 3 now? I mean, with the opening music, we had Friday. We're here at the end of Saturday. What would you say, just kind of summing everything up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just blown away, on adrenaline and a little bit sleep deprived, but really excited to have 3 days under the belt. We've got one more, and tomorrow's going to be a full day. So I've got one more speaking session in the morning. We've got some panel discussions, even have some baptisms scheduled, and at least one other person that has asked me to baptize them, and another couple that came by the booth earlier and said they wanted me to baptize them. So I guess tomorrow will be pretty busy for me as well.
It's definitely busy for me. There's lots of things going on. We've been in panels. I just actually finished my main stage presentation on the dangers of scientism, and right after me was Pastor Nate Wolfe, and he came on stage and gave a very emotional testimony with his entire family there. And it was amazing to meet all of his family, his wife, just getting to know your sons. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to personally meet your daughter yet, but all 3 of your sons. And it was great with Holden talking to him the most today and just hearing how all this went down. And it was actually kind of funny how at the first you're just like, shh, don't tell anyone when you first told your son Holden. And then it follows suit with the rest of the family. But what a blessing that all of your children, have come over to this. You don't have anyone strayed, upset, rebelled. They're all kind of there. You know what I mean? And that's an incredible thing. I was explaining to Holden that's just an amazing thing. But he did tell me It's really exciting for them to see their dad so happy. They said, don't get me wrong. As a pastor, he'd love what he did. But we're seeing him go to a whole new level in what God's called him to now. And it's really exciting for the family to see it. So
yeah, and it was really cool because my wife and my daughter Hannah, we came up Thursday together. Then the next day on Friday morning, two of my sons, Holden and Hudson, they came up in a separate car. And then right after lunch, my oldest son, Harrison, came up in a third car because he had been working a couple of days. And so all 6 of them were here for dinner. And all 6 of them all 6 of us got to hear your presentation as well. So they thought that was really cool. Really cool. They got to sit in on your presentation. And then I got up there and, there was definitely some floods of emotion. It just hit me so hard that here I am standing on the stage. Last year, didn't know anybody. Nobody knew us. I wasn't involved in this kind of truth ministry whatsoever. Yeah. And, I got emotional when everybody was standing up and clapping for me. It hit me and I got that lump in my throat. And I made the mistake of looking over at my wife, who had been pretty stoic most of the time, but she was losing it. And so that's when I was like, all right, I have one slide left. I'm done. My throat's dry. Thank you so much.
Yeah. It was amazing also in your presentation to talk about the first video you came across being The Global Lie, my documentary I put out in 2016. And I was sitting there watching this, and I'm like, never would I ever thought that, when I'm doing and I'm putting this out on YouTube, that it would be the very first pastor fired for this topic that would come forward and use his name. I said, it's very, very historic in the sense that, there had been other people in ministry that had approached me and told me their story, but they wanted to remain anonymous. And yet you're the first pastor to, come out and put your name forward and tell your story about the tragedy that you went through for simply attending a conference with topics such as flat Earth.
Yeah, and I hope that it does your heart good to know, hey, when you were making that documentary, I mean, obviously you knew that it would impact people, but you probably had no idea how many views that video would have. Over 1.2 million views, or is it possible? I got 1.2 million.
Yeah, but I think the global lies up in 600,000 or 700,000. Yeah, absolutely. But that's the whole thing. It's like we don't understand the ripple effect. And again, you're basically being obedient to the Father's call based on what you're to put out there. But it's amazing to me, how many lives have been touched on anything that I've done within Celebrate Truth. But
And
it was just
you-
really special, the
Yeah.
fact that now, asking you to be my co-host and how it all kind of came around. It's like the global lie, and it's just too much.
Yeah.
It's amazing, but it's great to be here, in person with you again. This is the second show that we've done in person. The other one was at Question Everything in California.
Yeah, and I think if I remember right, we were able to squeeze in most, if not all, of both Jared Cressman and Nathan Reynolds' presentations during our broadcast there, and those were two of the most powerful presentations the whole weekend. So it was really great timing, and I know that you've said previously you've had ministers reach out to you, and for whatever reason, fear, worry, doubt, fear of ridicule, they just would not stand up for that truth publicly, and I get it, I really do, because I know there was some fear and concern there, but I knew this was the truth. And once I was fired, I realized that I was completely freed to follow wherever the Father would need me to go. And so it was just a matter of him showing us that. Little did we know that that answer to prayer would involve me being immediately fired 3 weeks after the conference. In our human wisdom, I would have liked it to go a little different, but his wisdom is supreme. And looking back, they say hindsight is 20/20. I definitely realized that that's what needed to happen. It needed to be a quick severance. And within a few hours, I was talking to you and Skiba and Hummer and the Baileys and a bunch of people. Yeah. And you impressed upon me, you said, Nate, you don't understand the significance of your willingness to stand up. And so that started that journey. And it's hard to imagine that it's been almost a year.
Yeah. Wow, almost. They were coming up on that marker,
September 14th.
14th,
be a year.
Right after Take on the World 2018. It all kind of changed at that point. It was just wake up one morning, you have a text of all things, not a call, a text.
Just after
it's like, you will be meeting with the elders in 1 hour. Like how, it's just intense, really intense.
It's still hard to believe that that's the way that conversation was opened, but really that's the truth about how things
it was like, could you meet us, you will meet us in 1 hour. It's like, what if you got the text an hour late?
Yeah.
It's like, you're going to be already running late.
Well, how I knew I was obviously suspect that I thought maybe I was getting fired, but how I knew I was definitely getting fired was after I pressed the one elder. I called him and I said, this feels like an ambush, what's going on? And he didn't want to answer. He said, well, let me call you back. So he talked to his buddies and he called me back and he says, yes, you are being ambushed. I could not believe he said that.
Hey, at least he's honest.
He was honest enough. I appreciate that. And after he said that, I said, well, if you guys won't tell me what the subject of the meeting is, I'm not going to come. Yeah. And when he told me, it's your choice if you want to come or not, but we will all be there at 9 o'clock. I knew that they were going to fire me.
Yeah. I can just imagine just the feeling, pit of your stomach. It's like,
I felt sick.
Oh, of course. It's almost like, if you woke up, you just know you're going into your job because you're going to be fired. It's just a sick feeling. You don't see it coming, or it's just a horrible feeling all around. Yeah. But anyways, it's been an amazing journey since then. New doors are opening up. It's just incredible what's happening. I mean, you were just able to release your very first book and debut it at Take on the World 2019. So that's exciting, and just so much. The radio show, it's incredible how much stuff's happened in 1 year.
I never would have known that we'd be doing all these things and partnering with you on the radio show and other aspects of truth and ministry. And I was so thankful. I was sweating a little bit about whether or not the book would make it out in time, because as you know, and even with self-publishing, you have to wait on the printing. And I had a few little issues with the spine, and they weren't just right. And I wanted to get it, 99% there. And it came through on time. I did rush the shipping on the books, and that was great because they came in a few days early. And I think I've already been able to pass out and sell about 40-something books. And so some books were purchased by a lady, and she said, I want you to give these out to people who need them. And so I've already passed out some of those. And so that was a wonderful blessing as well.
Oh, that's great. Well, yeah, it's been incredible just being, at this conference. And, each conference has a different, unique feel to it, but there's something really special about Take on the World. It's amazing what person Liz Bailey, do here.
Yes.
I appreciate it so much. And, as a conference organizer myself, I relate to exactly how much work goes in behind the scenes. I don't think people really realize it, but it's great to see just what it does for the people and what it means to them, and just meeting people, the speakers, and then, the conferences that I've done. It's an amazing journey because, putting on the very, very first Flat Earth conference in 2017 was very historic, but it was just very incredible to see what happened with the media, with the world, the way things transitioned at that point. And then, putting on the very first one in Canada, also Denver last year at the International. And it's great because, on our show tonight, we have a really special guest that's basically been able to take that journey throughout all of these conferences.
Yes.
And it wasn't so much just the conferences, it was a quest to find out, why do flat earthers believe what they believe? Who are these people? And, as a filmmaker, I believe that our guest really encapsulated, the essence of what people are really trying to look at. Are they all crazy? Could there be more? What's going on? How is it that so many people are waking up to one topic, such as flat Earth of all things? I mean, the craziest thing you can possibly think about in 2019, right? Who in the right mind could even believe in such a thing, right? But it's a real honor, and it's amazing to have Jake Grant from NYSTV with his very first documentary that debuted today.
Yes.
Today, you're getting an exclusive interview. I think it's the first interview since the release of his brand new documentary, What If the Earth is Flat? Jake Grant, good to have you on the show. How are things?
It is fantastic to be here. Things are pretty good. I'm happy to be sharing this journey that I went on investigating the flat Earth topic. Now, if you haven't turned on your TV, you might not have heard about the flat Earth movement. But if you've been watching YouTube, if you've been watching the late night news, you probably have heard that people are starting to believe the Earth is flat. Now, whenever it comes to the rise of this viral trend, we have to, give kudos to the social media influencers and the people who have had to add their 2 cents over the past 2 years, jumping on the viral trend, wanting to speak towards the topic. But we also see something else coming out online in the media platforms that has allowed this information to spread around, these theories and different conspiracies that build up to the overarching theme of flat Earth. We see something alarming, and this is the censorship that is now coming onto flat Earth conspiracies coming on to underlying conspiracies that build up to it. And whenever we look at this, it's interesting because the censorship is something that in the next few years we might not be able to figure out why people have started to question the government agencies that are telling us the narrative they are. We might not be able to find out what experiments people have done to prove to themselves that the Earth is flat. And so for these reasons, I saw that there was an incredible value in documenting the reasons people have become flat earthers over the past 3-4 years as the movement has grown as a whole. And so the premise of the film is to try to attempt to come at it from an unbiased perspective. I never give my opinion on it, but I do report on why the movement has grown, what red flags it puts up when it comes to the censorship of free speech, and also it ties into the biblical reason people are coming to become flat earthers. Now, this is an important thing for those of you out there that might not be flat earthers yet, or those that might have people in your family that are believers but are not flat earthers, because of this reason. Creationists, in their belief, already in some fundamental ways, disagree with what science at large teaches us in the classroom. Let's look at the creation account, for example. Day 4 is when the sun, moon, and stars are created. And yet we are taught in the classroom the solar system heliocentric model where the suns or the stars draw in gas clouds and different particles, and these create the balls of mass which are looked at as planets today. But yet when we look in the scripture, it's the opposite. And Robbie has talked about how a good 70% of the people, at least we see at these flat earth conferences that Robbie's put on, are Bible-believing Christians. And so this is an important thing to talk about, because if censorship is coming to people that are looking into conspiracies or flat earth, could censorship be just around the corner for people who just have a biblical faith and are not even flat earthers? So that's why it should be important for those of you out there that might not yet have dabbled into this particular topic, but it's worth looking for just for the novelty of understanding and archiving this information while it's still available and can still be found.
Wow, I mean, it's been a busy year for you, Jake. I mean, you got married this year and released your first documentary film. Maybe explain a little bit what that was like just before we get really into the film about, juggling all these things. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening in one year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a big year. Definitely getting married is something that's a fantastic thing, and I'm really glad to have been able to follow the Flat Earth movement over the past 2.5 years, and to compile this information. Now coming out with a film to get to share this with people is definitely an exciting thing for me, and I hope people like it. And so,
let me be the first one to basically say that what I've seen so far, it is brilliant. It is. I mean, it's hard to put into words, but there's laughter in it. There's seriousness. There's the real quest for truth, the journey, the way it's edited. As a fellow filmmaker, I definitely see the work, the care that's been taken to this project. And like I said, it's hard to put into words, but it's really, really good. And I cannot wait to watch the rest of it. I just literally got a teaser of 30 minutes. And then, I found out it is 2 hours and 40 minutes. Wow. And I'm so excited because I thought, there's another half hour to go, or maybe 40 minutes. He's like, it's 2 hours. He's had to cut it down. I know how that is, right? When you're like, oh, I got to cut it down. It was actually longer. He actually shortened it. So, and I'm sure that was painful for you to chop those bits out that you wanted to keep in, because it always is editing a project. It's like, what do I chop, right? What do I get rid of? Because everything is good. That's the way, I seen it. But I'll tell you, 2 hours and 40 minutes is going to cover a lot, and you are going to see a lot of things. Nice. You're going to probably laugh, cry, be surprised, but it's going to make you think. And let's start first before we even really get into the whole Flat Earth thing and what you learned in this journey. What was it like? What was it like for you, releasing your very first documentary film?
Of course, I've worked on other film projects in the past, but this is really the only one that I've kind of pioneered myself. I kind of drove myself to these conferences and made sure to record all the best, most interesting moments I could. And so releasing it as my first big film, it's an exciting thing, and hopefully the first of many as I continue to work on different projects. So I just find, these fringe topics very interesting because it really is taking the world by storm. And even though it's fringe, it's definitely on a lot of people's radars. And so I feel like being able to share my opinion and my experience of this, and doing so in my first big full-length film will be a fantastic experience.
Can you think of anything, in your journey and in your research, anything more fringe than the topic of Flat Earth?
I don't know. Some people might believe the Queen's a lizard or something. But with any conspiracy, I've come to find with this journey that there are conspiracies that are absolute conspiracy fact, and we can't get away from that. And there are also conspiracies out there where people make truth claims that are unsubstantiated. But that is not what I've found with the Flat Earth topic. I've found that all of the underlying conspiracies, of course, that build up to Flat Earth have a lot of credence to them that can really make people think, hey, some of these things need to be looked into. And it's not so much some guy in his mom's basement making a claim, but more so something that does have interesting facts that could draw you further into the investigation.
So let's get into basically, I guess, the beginning of the film, and maybe kind of explain exactly what your initial thoughts were, starting this journey. And as you were putting it together, what did you really want to convey to people about the topic, about the people? Maybe you can explain a little bit about that.
Well, with my work with NYSTV, I've got to interview a lot of people on a wide range of conspiracy topics. And when it comes to this topic in particular, I was interested to figure out what was convincing so many people. And a lot of people that I've had close relationships with have started to investigate this topic. And I wanted to understand and help convey to the layperson hey, this is why so many people are being convinced. And so in getting into it, my whole goal was to kind of categorize and archive this information of this journey that so many people are going on, explain why the movement has grown as a whole, explain what has caused people to lose trust in a lot of agencies and different information that we're being told is absolute truth, different narratives that are being pushed on us, and also what is the impact overall when it comes to the future. So we live in this golden age of the internet right now, where information can be passed freely back and forth between people. People can find videos on YouTube or wherever talking about a whole range of topics. And is this golden age that has allowed the rise of fake news, yes, people coming up with things that are out of the blue, they're making them up, but also has allowed an alternate narrative to be shared that has a lot of facts to it, and that makes you question the things that we're being taught and shown as the mainstream narrative, I guess you could say. And so it was really important to me to put out my 2 cents on this and to get this information out there before this information couldn't be accessed anymore, because very soon we're going to have a lot more censorship in the things we can access online. Just recently we found out information about Google affecting elections and stuff like that by putting certain pages in front of people in their search results. Project Veritas is something that talked about this. Also, we have the shadow banning that is going on with a lot of different topics. Pinterest, for example, is hiding anybody who would come against the mainstream word on vaccinations, for example. You can't even search it on their site. And so when it comes to this particular topic, it is so important to have this film explain why this movement even happened. Because in 5 years and 10 years, when the AI computers that can tailor every single person's search result to a minute detail, whenever that kicks in, I fear that nobody will ever be able to look back and find the information that so many people are able to access today, or slowly not being able to access actually today. Because just a few months ago, actually, in making this film, in doing the research, you could search for flat earth videos and find many that were people that actually believed it and that were explaining why they believed it. But that is no longer the case. And so for me, that is the heart behind this. Let's understand it. Let's help people that aren't flat earthers understand why somebody would even dabble in this topic, because the big pill flat earth might be hard to swallow, but are we in danger of sweeping aside all these underlying topics, all these underlying conspiracies that have been proven as conspiracy fact, which when people investigate them, they compile them, build up to the overarching belief that the earth is flat?
Could you explain, some of the people that are in the film, and maybe a little bit about each, some of the significant people that in your journey you got to know and get a little bit deeper with their beliefs and just who they were as people?
Yes, absolutely. So the journey is kind of centered around the Flat Earth conferences I went to, which of course Robbie Davidson had put on. And I like to explain it in the film how the Flat Earth movement kind of grew in the same way that Marvel built the Avengers thematic universe. So let's look at it this way. You had a Captain America movie. You had an Iron Man movie. And let's look at these as different people who have investigated this topic and started to produce content talking about flat Earth. So you have a Rob Skiba, who's in the film. You have Robbie Davidson. You have ODD TV. You have Mark Sargent. You had Patricia Steer. You had a wide range of people. All of these were represented at the Flat Earth International Conference. But then you have a guy like Robbie Davidson who comes along, like Captain America did, and assembles the Avengers into this unified whole that can then be presented to the masses. This is the team of Avengers coming together. And from that, you also have these spin-off, not spin-off, but there's a ton of other superheroes, you could say, popping up, or actually in this context it would be people who are talking about flat earth experiments, talking about questioning and challenging the narratives from NASA, looking into the official documentation of that might talk about calculations based on flat Earth, looking into the photography and the issues with the Apollo missions. You have so many people popping up and joining this overall team that is helping to expound this flat Earth movement. And so whenever it comes to the people that are actually involved in the film, I got to interview a lot of great people at these conferences. So there's a lot of people there that are actually just have been convinced and they are sharing their opinion. I get to interview, let's start from the top. Robbie Davidson was there. We have Rick Hummer, who is the MC for the international conferences. We have Bob Nodell, who is a very rational-minded guy who likes to take a look at the science behind the flat Earth, looking into experiments that could disprove or challenge science at large and the theories that have been talked about and taught in classrooms today. We have guys like ODD-TV, who was involved in putting out a lot of the first videos that helped convince a lot of people. You have Mark Sargent, who was the guy who pointed at the flat Earth door, as he's often represented in a lot of the media that comes out. You have Pastor Nate Wolfe, who I got to interview about a biblical segment for the film, talking about his journey into understanding how he had to place his faith on the Word of God, to stand on his belief that God is not going to lie to us, but instead he's going to depict his creation in the way he intends us to view it, and how he stood on that, and it changed his life forever. I get to talk to Nathan Thompson, who runs the official Flat Earth and Globe discussion group.
There's so many Nathans in flat Earth.
Yeah.
Did you discover that?
Yes. I get
I'm thinking of legally changing my name to Bob.
Bob. There's a lot of Roberts.
Well, I guess
there.
there's two Rob. Maybe like James or something.
Yeah. But these are some of the names. You might find them familiar, but really they were a core part of the narrative in the film because they are some of the most involved in these conferences. But I will say this, there's no real leader to the Flat Earth movement. There's just a lot of people that have become convinced on their own, and they see that this information needs to be shared, and so they start producing their own content. And it's at these conferences that you see so many people coming together and gathering so that they can be around like-minded people, be able to share their investigation and the life-changing revelations that they feel they've come to, and be able to experience other people that might be stigmatized by their families, might be stigmatized by society at large, but in a way that they can then be able to feel that there is a society or a group for them to be a part of, and it's not just people that are on the fringe in their mom's basement on their own, but there's more than just a few people coming to this flat Earth belief. I have local people that I know and run into all the time that I'm finding out are flat earthers, and it's just so fascinating to see how this movement is growing, because when you look at the YouTube algorithms and the amount of views that the flat Earth topic is getting, it's astronomical. Sorry to use that term, but it's in the hundreds and hundreds of millions, not to mention what has been viewed in late night TV and on different podcasts and media influencers putting out their own content, that it's just innumerable. And what it is it's causing people to say, wait a second, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. How could anybody believe this? Mm-hmm. And then they're going and investigating and being convinced themselves. Mm-hmm. And yet, like I said before, soon it's not going to be that easy for them to be convinced, because we also see that all of these media influencers' videos are piling on top of anything that would be pro-flat Earth, and it's now very hard to find anything that would lend credence to the idea.
Well, I believe it was Flat Earth International Conference 2018 in Denver, Colorado. I believe that was the very first FEIC that you had been to, Pastor Nate. Yeah. Maybe you can explain a little bit about kind of what you experienced there, because that would be your first time also meeting more of a diverse crowd outside of the biblical arena, rather than just strictly, biblical minded people. Maybe you can comment on what you perceived going to that conference.
Yeah, I was impressed that, although there was a wide variety of different types of folks with varying beliefs, certainly you have many people there that are, professed believers, and, they follow the truth of the scriptures. They fellowship in different communities. But then you also had, some that weren't really sure. They were open, but they just hadn't made a decision yet on that. And I really respect those that continue to search for that, spiritual truth, because I think really because of their flat Earth background, they recognize that sometimes you just need to keep digging, you need to keep pushing, you need to be patient, you need to be thorough. And they recognize that sometimes it's just a matter of maybe rubbing elbows with the right kind of people that you can, discuss the important things about life. You have those who are, atheistic, but they're definitely convinced, that the earth is not, a spinning ball.
Well, I want to go on the record here because I would say, and I mean, I get this defined all the time. Yeah. The definition of an atheist is someone that doesn't believe in any God.
Yes.
So there's a difference between not believing in God of the Bible and not believing in any God. There is zero atheists in flat Earth because they all identify that there is a creator, there's something, we're here for a purpose. Yes. So there's no random, accident flat earthers. There's no, it exploded and created flat Earth. Yeah. So I just go on the record because I know a lot of people will say that, but I have yet to run into it. I believe in Canada, I actually opened it up for the floor. And I said, if there's any atheists that believe in flat Earth, please, see me or whatever, right? Yeah. Well, afterwards, a couple people put up their hand or whatever. One guy, that I sat down for dinner, when I got talking to him and explaining to him, he's like, oh, no, like, I believe there's a creator. I just don't believe in God in the Bible. And I found this because I do this at every conference because I think it's a very significant point. And I don't know if you encapsulated this, fully in the documentary, Jake, but maybe you can comment a little bit more on that. But isn't it intriguing that wherever people are on their journey, whether they were atheists their whole life, in a split second, seeing the deceptions of this world through scientism, they instantly become a believer that there's something greater. There's a higher power. But it's not just even a higher power. We're here, we're special, we're unique because we're positioned where everything was created for us. See, that's the difference. Yeah. In my circles, way before, I meet people all the time and they say, I believe in a higher power, I'm spiritual. But now it's actually refined more to the creator of the Bible when there's an intimate relational aspect to God, right? And that's what I find profound is because people are identifying, saying we're unique, we're special, we're at the center of everything. Everything was created for us. And maybe you can comment a little bit about that, Jake, as far as what you were getting and talking to people, maybe people that did not even believe in God or weren't religious, and maybe they talked a little bit in the film about just what this has done for them on their journey.
I think it's great to depict this part of the Flat Earth movement in the way that activists are going out and talking about Flat Earth to people on the street. And in some of the segments I've recorded, there's a guy named Realm Walker I was following around as he was sharing the value of people and how if the earth is flat, if God created the earth, then they are special. There is a purpose to life. And it's so fascinating to see how people reacted. I mean, I had a gentleman that I recorded who spouted off, I'm nothing, I'm worthless, I'm a speck, I'm a speck on a speck. And he almost directly quoted Bill Nye in his rant in one of his science shows where he goes, I'm a speck and you're a speck and we're nothing, we're worthless. And
that was a great quote, by the way. When I was watching that, I was like, wow, that was a really good one because I was trying to convey that in my presentation with another, element of someone carrying on with that, but not to that degree. We're nothing, we're a speck. I hadn't, touched on that one.
And really, whenever you look at what a lot of these theories that modern science is coming out with, talking about how infinitesimally small we are in the universe, how it's all just an accident that we're here, how we're just, monkeys that got smarter than we should have, then it's such a depressing world to live in. Truly, people who have bought into the narrative of evolution, of the Big Bang, and of a meaningless reality that's all happenstance, then of course they're going to feel worthless and meaningless.
But also not really having any morals, because who cares? Who cares whatever I do? It's a hedonistic type of ideology because it's like, I'm just going to live for the moment. I don't care. Who are you to tell me it's wrong? I'm going to die anyways, right? So that's what kind of gets center point with this discussion.
Absolutely. And then on the flip side, when they see that there's some interesting rational scientific experiments first that they can start with, that then lend credence to the Word of God, which is exactly what creationist ministries have done over the past 20 years. If they've tried to show that you don't always have to buy what's in the textbook, because there are rational explanations to what we can observe that would then prove a biblical narrative correct and true. There's examples that prove a worldwide flood when we're told that certain sediment layers show millions and millions of years of separation between them. And yet, we also find that there's a different opinion out there. And I think that's the most important thing, is it brings in people that have very rational minds. They don't want to buy into some guy making something up, first of all. And whenever they see that there is a rational explanation that can lead back to value in the Word of God, they find a hope. Wow, this is all not just meaningless. There's a purpose, because if He created the heavens and the earth, and Scripture talks about His plan for mankind, then that means that is the plan for me. And it's not just me having to figure out everything on my own. And I see that's what a lot of creation ministries have tried to do, but they stopped short. And they allowed people who pushed cosmology and certain aspects and theories related to that to have a pass. And yet, this is the very thing that is the root to many of the theories that totally disregard the narrative of the Scripture. It's the root that then justifies a Big Bang, that then justifies evolution and the meaninglessness of life to the secular world and those who would deny a creator. And so it's so fascinating to see people that are atheists start to look into this topic and come to the point where they're theists. They're people that say there is no way this is all by chance. There is no way this is an accident. There is a plan. There is a orchestration to the world that we live in. And it's not just taking somebody's word for it. Instead, they start often with rational aspects of the flat earth theory. And this then draws them to see that there is truth in the Scriptures, in the Word of God. And then they start to investigate it further, and they find that there is far more truth than they might have believed. And then this just causes them to start to walk out their life in a totally life-changed way. Because when somebody is first an atheist and they're just buying into all these different things that would discredit the Word of God, really they're just trying to figure it out for themselves. They're just going through life without a deeper meaning. But whenever the Word of God is revealed to be true, is revealed to have an impact on your life and on your worldview, it gives this meaning that they've not had before. And I like to talk about it in this way. Flat Earth truly is a rare conspiracy because it's one of the only that I know that has this silver lining. Now, whenever we talk about conspiracies, there are, of course, many that have been proven to be conspiracy fact, but are extremely depressing because it just shows us that all the whole deck of cards is stacked against us, that we've been duped, that we've been tricked, and there's no way out of whatever. Whether it be the paying into the Federal Reserve System, whether it be, different false flag events, whether it be just the poisons that are being dumped into mankind. These things are extremely depressing topics, but yet these things do build up and help you understand why people would start to look into flat Earth overall. And when somebody understands that, hey, the Earth might be flat, it changes everything, because no longer has everything been discovered. Instead, it opens the imagination to then start wondering, wow, there's just this whole world out there that we can't even fathom and understand, yet we can see what we can observe. and we can start to investigate, and we don't just have to take their word for it that everywhere's been explored or that they figured out everything there is to figure out. Instead, it opens up the realm of possibilities, and it also makes the Creator so much closer. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, even for myself, I mean, I've been a believer since I was, younger, but really as a committed believer as a young adult at age 18. And, I've been in ministry for over 26 years, but when I recognized the true biblical cosmology, even myself as a believer and as a preaching and teaching minister for over 2 decades, it changed something in me.
Absolutely.
When I recognize that the Father's throne is above, and it's not, somewhere at the edge of some ever-expanding galaxy in some strange dimension that we can't really understand or comprehend, it brings him so much closer. And so when you see the scriptures that say that he's looking down at the hearts of men to see if there's someone who will follow his way, who will honor him. I mean, I know that we all struggle with sin and temptation every single day, myself included, but I can honestly tell you that I have struggled less with sin and temptation since I understand that my Father who created me is really above and he's looking down, because I want to be more pleasing to him. And so I can only imagine if that's what it does for a believer, imagine what it can do for somebody who wasn't a believer and then all of a sudden realizes that, man, the Creator is much, much nearer than I ever realized. And when you have that realization, even let's think about prayer. When you're praying, you're like, man, my prayers are going up to the throne of heaven. And it's just very encouraging. So that was just a game changer for me. I mean, there were sins that I struggled with for years and years. And some of those were kind of temptations through generational sin. Those aren't even an issue right now because I just realized that, man, my Father is so close. Absolutely. It's like just like in having 4 kids, teenagers and young adults. I now, I want them to honor me, and especially when Dad's nearby, they recognize that, hey, Dad's nearby, man. I need to watch what I'm doing.
I know that Nathan Thompson says this, but he'll sit there and say, if you love me so much, why would you put so much space between us? Yeah. And it's such a great quote. Yeah. Because he wrestled with that for a long time. But honestly, I think even as Christians, even though we know he's omnipresent, he's everywhere, it still has that perception of like outside of time and space. That's a long distance. If I'm praying and that thing's just moving, I mean, it's great. Even if it's going at light speed, it's taking a lot of time to get there. How long does it take? It's like, how many light years, is it taking? I joke a little bit, but again, that perception of having too much space, and it really didn't make a lot of sense. Why would you put that much space between you and your creation? It doesn't make sense. Exactly. In the same way that lighting and an environment, you don't need it 18,000 times bigger than the environment itself. It does quite fine having a small light bulb lighting up a big room. Again, you don't
need a sun that's 400 times larger than the Earth.
Mark Sargent says it very well. He says, look, when you're looking at a heliocentric Big Bang cosmology, you need so many things interplaying, working together. But if you have an enclosed flat Earth, you don't need much at all. Right? So it's just efficiency. It just makes sense, right? But it also, like you brought up, which is an incredibly important point, it brings you closer. That relational aspect is there. And maybe, Jake, you could comment in your film, what you got from that and people's perceptions after coming to Flat Earth, how their relationship, because I know for me, I was devout, I was on fire, I was very passionate, but something changed in the sense that I'm like, wow, everything is literally true. And when I realized he was up there, for me, it was a humbling moment because I'm like, why was I a doubting Thomas? Why couldn't I just take you at your word? Why did I have to actually make excuses and say, well, that's got to be poetic. I don't get it. Yeah. Pillars, how does pillars work on a ball? Guess it's got to be poetic, right? And it's like, forgive me, Father, for doing that. And maybe you can comment, Jake, just, what the perception and what people's reactions were as Christians coming to this, because we've talked about atheists instantly being transformed, but it is remarkable how people that were really, they wouldn't say, I wasn't Christian before. They're like, I was Christian. But what this did to deepen their relationship with their Creator.
Absolutely. One of the people I talked to in the film is named Rick Hummer. Maybe you guys have heard of him. Of course.
He's been on the show.
Okay, good. But Rick's got this fantastic testimony of how he was asking for confirmation. He was asking God to speak to him, and he pulls out this old booklet, and he starts to read it, and it was actually a school book assignment from back when he was in high school or whatever in the 80s. And he finds that the first line of this little assignment said, what were the early beliefs of the shape of the earth? And he's recording this on his phone because he's so surprised he stumbled across this. And he reads it out loud. In my own words, I said, it was flat. And as soon as he says the word flat, lightning strikes.
Wow.
And it was just so cool to see something like that happen, that somebody praying for confirmation had an experience like that. And I feel like all the time people are having experiences that are supernatural, that are leading them to feel like God is pushing them in one direction more than the other. And I think that's interesting. And it deepens their faith because it almost gives a mission to people that are believers that have come to realize this. Because as soon as a light is shined in the darkness, you realize really how dark it was in the first place. And it gives people the reason to stand up and start to share this information that they've come to that has changed their lives so drastically. And it's no longer, hey, I need to go to the 9 to 5 and live till I die. But instead, it's, I need to now go out there and change the world, literally.
Amen.
And I think that's what's so encouraging to believers today that are becoming flat earthers, is they're starting to realize that there is a mission, and also it's this tool that has been given to this movement that helps them bring people into a belief in the Word of God, and ultimately to share the gospel with them that would reveal to them, yes, where we live might not be as we have been shown in the classroom as kids, with that globe that, by the way, has a sticker on the bottom of it that says, not for educational purposes, but for artistic display. And whenever people come to this understanding and they realize that this is a powerful truth that can really help people's worldview change, that can help break them away from the dogmatic scientific indoctrination that really turns out to be almost a religion of itself. And I don't mean to come against any people that are real, empirical science people, because there is real science, but rather the theories and indoctrination that is pushed as absolute fact that can be challenged. And so whenever believers find this truth and they're able to share it and break people out of a ideology and a mindset that would justify an atheistic belief set, it's like this invigorating thing. And I saw it when I covered different activists going on the street sharing this information. You could see people that they'd not be able to defend their belief, first of all, that the earth was a spinning globe, which was always fascinating to witness. And maybe people just aren't educated in most of the arguments, but the fact of the matter is that in a few moments they have to start to question the reality that they're in, which then makes them wonder, hey, could I have also been wrong about God? And then this opens the door for a lot of these flat earth activists to then say, hey, if God is real, then what? And I think that's the big thing with faith in the flat earth movement. That's a major aspect, is if this is a flat earth cosmology, if God can be shown to be just up there, or this is definitely not just an accident and just a ball in infinity, what does that then mean? Well, that means God has required things of us. That means he wants to have a relationship with us. And it also means that we've been messing up pretty heavily in our ignorance of his presence there.
Absolutely. We're going to be going to the top of the hour, so I wanted to make sure real quick, Jake, that you could let people know the movie is out now, What If the Earth is Flat, and maybe you can comment and let people know exactly where to find it and any information.
Fantastic. Yes, you can find What If the Earth is Flat on NYSTV.org. And for the time being, if you want to watch it for free, you can with the promo code Flat Earth, all undercase, all one word. Make sure to get on there and sign up. You can watch our other documentaries and films, but get on there and check out this story, this journey of explaining the Flat Earth movement and how it's grown to what it is today. That's awesome. There's going to be so much more coming up in hour 2. Don't go anywhere. We've actually we interrupt this broadcast for a special news announcement. That's right. We've got a super secret guest coming on after first hour. So just stay tuned because he's going to be coming up. He also got to see 30 minutes of Jake Grant's new documentary film released today, What If the Earth is Flat? And he's going to comment a little bit about, what he saw and his perception and a lot more. And I'll give you a hint because I know you're dying to find out who it is. We've had him on the show before. So maybe go through the catalog. We've done, 34 shows, Pastor Nate?
Yeah, I don't know what the chances of that, but 34. So.
You got to figure out. Have fun. We're going to be going to the break here soon. We're getting very, very close. But it's really exciting, Nate, be able to do these type of live on location. We're here at Take on the World 2019, Vermilion, Ohio. Yeah. It's been amazing. Over 30 speakers. I think I've been able to at least meet every one of them. I tried my best to at least, shake hands. I think I've got 2 more to go, but I ran into a few today. I'm like, hey, you're one I haven't seen. You popped up, but it is hard when you're dealing with 30 speakers. How many of you actually officially? What do you think?
Oh man, I've met so many, but the thing that just blows me away is how many of the speakers are able to go to so many different events. You have those that you see almost at every event. You always see like 10 or 15 folks at every single event. And then, throughout the year, some people are busy doing different projects, and some people are still working the 9 to 5. And so certain events they can't make it to. But it's always awesome, if it's been several months since you've seen somebody, and then you get to see them again in person. And of course, we hear each other every week, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. We talk a lot, and we do the show every week, mm-hmm. but we don't see each other, but yet every few months, mm-hmm. When we're blessed to cross paths at a conference. And so for me, it's really exciting to see the folks that were speakers last year. Mm-hmm. The only negative for me is that now that I'm a speaker, I miss a lot of your guys' stuff because, this weekend I'm speaking on 3 different stages. And so I missed, some of Jake's stuff. I missed, some of Paul's stuff. I missed the chat.
Now that you're on the speaker circuit, get used to it because speakers don't get to see other speakers, or rarely. I mean, they try their best sometimes, but sometimes it just doesn't work. People love to talk. And it's important for us to really, get to know people that have been watching our stuff. It means a lot to them, us meeting them, developing those relationships. So it is important to take that time. And honestly, it is live streamed. It is, up there. We can actually watch it. But yeah, sometimes as conferences grow, there's more tracks. It's like, there's too many decisions. Yeah. What am I going to do?
Well, in ministry, when I would go a couple times a year to a ministry conference, it was the same kind of thing. They might have 3 different tracks going on. And so you just had to make a choice. And what's beautiful about this is, NYSTV is recording things. There's the live stream going. So some people that couldn't make it were able to.
Yeah, if you're listening to this right now, sorry to interject, but yeah, if you're listening right now, there's one more day, full day tomorrow. It is being live streamed on Take on the World TV on YouTube. So type in Take on the World TV on YouTube, and it is powered by NYSTV. But check out the channel and make sure you watch the live stream because there's a lot of incredible stuff happening. There's lots of panels, there's different things happening. We're gonna have a good time. But anyways, don't go anywhere. Secret guest coming up. Give us a comment on Jake's new film. Again, you can get it at NYSTV.org.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey, welcome back to Celebrate Truth Radio, live on location at Take on the World 2019, Vermilion, Ohio. It's been amazing. We've been talking to Jake Grant as our guest, but I mentioned before the break that we have a super special guest coming in unannounced, but I had to drag him in because here's another person that's got to see a sneak peek at Jake Grant's new movie, What If the Earth is Flat? Yeah, you've been thinking all through the break who could be. Well, don't think any longer. We're going to tell you. Paul on the Plane, we've had you on before. Great to have you back.
Great to be here. I'm glad you pulled me in.
I like to be pulled. He's just walking by. He's just walking by, and you didn't hear it, but I grabbed his jacket. It was like, if you listen, if you go back, you're gonna hear the. I just grabbed his blanket. Yeah, like sit down. You're coming in. Anyways, I just thought, yeah, you were in there. What did you think when you saw the first 30 minutes of Jake's new film? I mean, it's very exciting for Jake to come out with his brand new, first time ever, film. And I'll tell you, I was sitting there with Rob Skiba, his wife, Rick Hummer, and me, and we were just looking at each other, and we were just like, wow, we were amazed. We had some good laughs, and I think it's going to be well perceived. What do you think, Paul?
Well, first of all, I was really excited to see that I had a starring role in the film because I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, and when you were panning down the front row, I was sitting there.
Did we like
so
go?
I saw myself.
Let's go back in 2017. Had you started up a YouTube channel at that point?
Yes.
You had.
Yes, yeah. I started kind of putting content online in early 2017.
Early 2017.
February,
okay.
March.
Okay. Yep.
I bought my P900. I started
That's right.
putting stuff on.
That was your first stuff. You had the whole camera thing. I remember your thumbnail or your.
Because I remember it was late March, early April of 2017 when it got smacked by the global lie, and then I remember seeing content from a bunch of other people, and I'm like, I remember thinking your YouTube name was very cool.
And I don't remember how I came up with that.
Did you come up with that?
People ask me all the time, and I don't really remember other than there's kind of a play on words with plane because I travel a lot for business and for pleasure. My wife and I, we love to travel. We have family in Ireland, and so we're moving around all the time. So I believe we live on an extended plane, flat, motionless plane, and I travel in airplanes, and so I just figured that no matter what I was doing, I was going to be on the plane.
Nice. That's really, really creative.
That's right.
So what was your initial reaction when you saw the sneak peek of the first 30 minutes of, by the way, and I found out from Jake that the entire documentary is 2 hours and 40 minutes. We get to watch a lot more. I'm really excited. But anyways, the first 30 minutes, what did you think?
Well, it was great. I don't know how many films you've done, but if this is your first one, then you've got a budding career in film because it was great. The editing was real tight. It was entertaining. I like how you kind of paused for, I don't know how much we want to reveal here, but you paused.
Oh, let's get some teasers. Come on. That's what the show is all about. We give teasers.
Some of the some of the people that were on the panel there and got to talk a little bit about their background and stuff. And it was just great. It was professional. It was very entertaining. And I was in it. So it was a great film.
You probably wouldn't have liked it if you just like, I didn't see myself. I'm out of here. But yeah, no, it was great. And I'm sure now that it's actually officially released, there's some stuff, Jake, that maybe you can comment on maybe something that that we don't know that you could hint at and stuff. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some stuff because I haven't even seen it. I was promised to be able to see it before as the screener, but of course Jake's busy and it's all good. But I'm sitting here now. I'm like, I gotta wait. So it's driving me crazy that I gotta wait a little bit longer here because we have bad reception and it's hard to stream that movie. But it looks great. So maybe you can comment a little bit on that.
Sure. So whenever you look at the film as a whole, it kind of starts off with this narrative of should we be willing to question the things we're being told, the reality we're being given, when conspiracy fact is an actual thing. And are people in danger of sweeping aside information that could change your worldview and do it in a rational, empirical way just because the term flat earth is too big of a pill? And so it begins with this journey. As I started to go, I went to the first international conference in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that was just a fantastic experience. I started to hear some of these people. I'd never even heard some of the speakers, but some of the things they were presenting really was, it showed inconsistencies in what we are being told is absolute fact. And these agencies that we are told to trust with all of our trust. even if they are government agencies, and even if they have maybe, come from, possible deceptive practices or weird origins, somehow today we're told, hey, you need to parrot everything that they say as fact. And yet, if we can look at what they've told us, and we can look at what they've shown us, and we can see inconsistencies that would maybe paint a different narrative or show that, hey, they are absolutely trying to deceive us in various ways, then it throws everything that they've presented and shown us into question. So this is some of the stuff that I first kind of came into contact with at the first international conference. And it really, I was like, oh man, this is fascinating, because conspiracies are able to be passed. Well, at least at that time, they were able to be passed freely between people. People were able to share that alternate narrative. And so it's allowed this movement to grow as a whole, because people can, have that conversation. What is the other perspective? But that time is coming to an end. And so I start to talk about how censorship is going to be shutting down these conspiracies. We had a document come out on mainstream news recently that was showing a picture of how FBI was calling certain conspiracies a domestic terrorism threat.
Wow.
And that is a freaky thought, especially if there's something to certain conspiracies. Is this just a way to squash anybody that would go against, Big Brother?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Fear-
everybody
fear-
kind of
yes.
echoes yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of what I realized whenever I was filming this. Wow, this is awesome that this information is able to be passed, and that we're in this age of the internet, that it is grown to the extent that it has, and has this effect on the world that it has, but it yet is not controlled by the powers that be. And of course, now we are starting to tread in waters where they're putting their tendrils into what we can then consume. And so who gets to deem what is fake news and what's not? What's the litmus test? And I think that's the dangerous thing, and what drew me to the topic. So after that, I kind of continue my journey, and the next stop was in Edmonton, in Canada, with the Canadian Flat Earth Conference. And that was just a fascinating experience, where I really got to get to know the speakers in a more intimate way than I feel a lot of the media.
You became kind of that one guy that was on the tour with all of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something.
You became like a roadie.
Absolutely. That's something that you won't get with a lot of these other media groups that have covered the Flat Earth movement. They didn't take the time to invest in the people, to understand, to see the hardships that they went through. They didn't take the time to go to every conference. They took 10, 15 minutes. They recorded their B-roll. They took 10, 15 minutes and got their interview footage. And they then put the narrative that they thought would get them the most views. They didn't even hardly go to the conference sessions. And this is something that's really...
That definitely was the case. Sorry to interject, Jake, but that was definitely the case in Canada. I noticed the difference between the U.S. media and the Canadian media, where they came in and they were gone. But usually with the U.S. ones, they stick around for the majority of the event. But you are bringing up what you experienced in Canada with the media. Yeah, I would definitely say you're spot on with the Canada. But it's not a proper representation of the media with all the conferences, especially in the U.S. It seems like they're there from start to finish. But yeah, Canada was very strange. I felt, wait a minute, my country, I'm hosting it, and like, come on, guys, like, what's up? You know what I mean? You ducktail and run out, like, what's going on?
Was there a hockey game on or something? Did they?
I'm not even sure, but usually there's not much hockey going on in August. We put that on in August. It was hot, but for me, it was really amazing as well. Afterwards, like you talked about, really getting to know them. I took most of the speakers out into the mountains, and we stayed at a house for 4 days, and we're all sitting around, cooking dinner. It was funny. I have all these pictures of like Rob Skiba and Bob McDowell and all these people like grocery shopping, and it was the weirdest thing. And then we'd be sitting there having dinner and cooking, and we're like, man, it's like Flat Earth real world going on. If we had cameras on,
Nice.
I wonder what the world would think if it was on full time, because it was just a surreal experience, but really got to know them on a deep level. When you spend 4 days consistently, in a house, you're cooking, you're eating together, you're all hanging out, you really go to a whole new level. So that's the one thing that I think is profound about your project when it comes to other people that have taken the time to document it, like you mentioned, you've really gone over and beyond, not only taking many years, but also going very deep and getting to know these speakers and different people that are in the community.
Absolutely. I know a lot of people, whenever they look at maybe the speakers or the presenters, there's been things thrown out there. Hey, these people are maybe CIA operatives or crazy things like that. But what I feel like I've tried to present is that these are just normal people that absolutely believe the earth is flat, and that have realized that is now their responsibility to try to share the information that they've come upon and try to get it out there. And I think that's the interesting thing about following these conferences. And so as I kind of went to the Canadian conference, I got to actually really get to know a lot of the people that were involved with the Flat Earth movement and the Flat Earth International Conference. And I got to see how people were reacting as people would share flat earth information. And that brings up the topic of flat smacking, right? Well, that's something I covered in the film, and it's really this process where somebody will come and they'll want to share their information or the experiments that will throw everything you've come to believe into question. And it's such a fascinating thing to watch it, because when somebody truly believes something, the power of persuasion is phenomenal. And it's so fascinating to get to record those things. And unless you follow flat earthers around and watch them in action, you don't get to witness the reason that the movement is growing. Yeah. And so I tried to record a lot of that and capture some of those moments as they were going. I had some great footage on the streets of Chicago as a guy named Nathan Thompson, who's probably one of the boldest flat earth activists that I've. The boldest. Okay,
I think we can crown him.
The boldest.
I would agree.
But as he walks up and starts to just share this information and has an answer for every question and comeback, and of course it was a fascinating thing to watch. And then from there we had the Flat Earth International Conference 2018, which came up the next year, and that really illuminated how media influencers and other groups were starting to jump on this viral topic, this viral trend, and wanting to add their 2 cents because they saw the numbers. They saw that it was getting a lot of attention. But it also was the beginning of the red flag that, hey, all the flat earth videos that actually explained the theory, that actually explained how people could come to this understanding, they're about to get buried by a lot of derogatory and dissenting voices. Yeah. And so that was really the start of that I began to witness that, and it made me realize, hey, I need to get this film out there soon so that people can see, hey, this information is starting to be buried. It's starting to be flagged as dangerous or something that needs to be censored, and that's why we need to archive this information. We need to see how this movement grew. And from there, we went into a lot of experiments and seeing people actually go out and try to test it for themselves, which is something you'll hear constantly in the Flat Earth movement, because there's nobody here trying to force you to believe in a system of beliefs without coming to your own conclusion. They just want you to look into it and have an open mind to have that discussion. And that's something that is also very fascinating about this particular iteration of the Flat Earth, because we hear about the Flat Earth Society, right? And whenever you look what they believe up, it's just these ridiculous claims that have no provable evidence, that are just something somebody's come up with because they want to be a contrarian. And yet the people that are in these flat earth conferences, that are making these videos, that are making these different experiments come to life, are just talking about what they can observe, talking about what they have found in the scriptures, for example, that, hey, this could lend credence to what we are observing and testing out. And I think that was something that I came to realize as I was following the movement as close as I did.
You brought up censorship, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk to Pastor Nate and also Paul on the plane, because they represent two different spectrums. First, we're going to go to Pastor Nate, because you came in, what was it like, for you, or what's the feeling coming in kind of really at the tail end when all of a sudden censorship just started hitting hard, right? You're starting up your YouTube channel and you're kind of seeing this happen where, myself and Paul on the plane, we were kind of going along for a while, and now we're seeing it. It'll be interesting to hear his take on it, because I definitely have my own. But what was it like for you kind of now seeing exactly what's going on? Because, you've been doing your YouTube channel, Fired for Truth, for how long? About a year?
Yeah, it's every bit of 11 months and coming up to a year. Yeah, when I came in, and in fact, if we back up to spring of 2017, when I came across your Global Lie documentary, that was at the time where you could still get the legitimate recommendations, and there was a chain, of those, the algorithm, and there was, even at that time, there were some, opposing views scattered about, but all of the good, legit stuff was really at the top, and it wasn't even hard, Had I been looking at videos of the flood, in 2018 or 2019, I probably never would have, number one, seen your documentary. And I certainly then, if I had seen anything related with the actual title of Flat Earth in the recommendations, it would have been the opposing view. And so I probably immediately would have been like, oh yeah, that's a stupid thing, and I just would have believed it hook, line, and sinker. But when I came on, and I did a few interviews, and one of the interviews I did was on your channel, stuff was going viral.
It was number 2, I think.
Yeah, stuff was going viral, and within the first week, I think I had 1,300 subscribers, and it was continually going up. A few months later, I passed 1,500. I noticed about 4 or 5 months ago, this was right after they had first announced they were talking about, they're going to specifically censor and target certain areas, Flat Earth, 9/11, all these different things. And I noticed that all of a sudden, the momentum really stopped. It was almost a dead stop. And it was just this very slow trickle. And then the last 2 to 3 months, what I noticed was every time I would gain about 10 followers or subscribers, then it would always bump down. But the interesting thing, it wasn't like it bumped down 1 or 2 one day and then bumped down. I'd be at, 1957, and then the next day I'd be like 1942 or 1945. And so
I'm noticing that a lot right now as well.
Really crazy, and it took me months to get from the 1950s up to 2000.
Right.
But I knew that wasn't reflective of reality, because actually my ministry was growing. I was still going to conferences. I was talking to people daily. I was still doing the radio show, and people were communicating to me through private messenger. Hey, I subbed your channel. Hey, I subbed your channel. And yet I'm seeing the subs go down. And so at that point I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about what the subs are doing. I'm just going to keep pushing forward with the truth. And I finally think recently the momentum, it pushed me over 2,000 subscribers. But even at that, it doesn't reflect the reality. And your channel, you should probably be over 150,000
right easily. Now. I've definitely noticed it. If anything, I mean, it was massively starting to lose like subscribers and stuff. And again, there's definitely foul play going on. There's no doubt. I mean, shadow banning with subscribers. I think right across the board, and I'm sure Paul could, comment on that. But I think, if we were to talk to, Mark Sargent or Jared or yourself or whatever, you definitely notice there's a shift. It's more of a trickle now that, and again, they're just basically working their way to basically limit it as possible. And that's what's so great about what Jake's doing, because this is what's going to be important, getting these things out to the public, right? Getting documentaries, using different mediums. And, we don't need to be discouraged because, like I said, we are definitely in a war. They're definitely, using the fear tactics. They're definitely in damage control. They're trying their best. But again, the truth is out. It can't be stopped. So as we, progress, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the program, about, where we go next, what are we doing and stuff. All this stuff is essential. And I explained this today in the panel today with Rob Skiba and Rick Hummer when Jake had us up there, doing his presentation and showing the premiere that, we are in this war. But again, the ripple effect. One person you could talk to, and you don't know what that one person, and I'm just an example of that, of just everything that God's done through me. And I'm one person that atheist that did that video making fun of flat earth, and I bring this up because it's important as well, even mockery brings people to this topic, because it did for me.
Yeah.
So maybe Paul can talk a little bit about kind of his experience, what he's noticed, especially in the last year. It's been dramatic for me. Paul, maybe you can talk a bit about censorship, what you're experiencing, and maybe just your views on it.
Yeah, I keep hearing from a lot of speakers and people I talk to. And we've all heard this when they say, you know, how did you come into this? How did you find out about this? It was even a thing. And they always say, well, I was on YouTube and it was a suggested video, and I was bored one day and I clicked on it, or whatever. I kept seeing it. I wouldn't click on it, but then one day I just decided to click on it. That was like everybody's experience when they came across this. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. That particular instance doesn't happen anymore, because what is recommended is not going to be those videos. So I think that's changing for sure. I was just looking while you're talking. I just pulled up my analytics, and it says over the last 90 days I've lost like 1,300 subscribers. So it's going the other way for me. I'm seeing it go down.
It is for me.
And there's no reason for that, because I haven't changed really anything I do. So I would say that I don't know.
You've just had more and more exposure. So realistically, you should have gained 1,500 or 2,000.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a kind of a chart, you try to do trends, it would creep up, a couple thousand every quarter or something like that. But it's going the other way right now.
Unless you said something that was just so awful, you have a mass exodus almost, where it's just like, that's appalling.
Yes.
No pun intended. But what I'm saying, they ran for the hill. There's no reason to be able to lose that many. I agree with the trickle, but there's no way you're going to lose that amount of numbers, especially in the fact that your channel, among other ones, are pretty much the leading channels as far as the content you do, your podcast, Dome Life, all these type of things. There's no reason, right? It's reaching more and more people. They should be going up, maybe not exponentially, but again, gradually, not losing every day.
Exactly.
And I found the same thing, even with my live stream. Every time I would throw a video on, I just lose it. That never happened before. Yeah. I was putting out more videos back in the day. I thought, okay, maybe they're annoyed because these new videos are popping up. But I was putting out video. No one was getting annoyed. All of a sudden, you go for a little bit, you put up a video, and everyone's like, oh, I hate him now. Like, it just didn't make any sense, right?
And really, it's the consistent content. I mean, most of the active viewership, they want that. And, you guys are putting out very consistent content. So it doesn't match up, even just in general terms and trends. It's totally obvious.
So Paul, what do you think? Because we can talk, like, we can do a whole show about this, and we probably should do a panel at some point, really talk about this. But really, really quickly, what do you think? Because you said obviously those days are over when it's like recommend videos and everyone's getting to see all this wonderful recommendations. That's over. So what do you think, 2020, 2021 will be like with social media?
Well, social media, strategies have been, you don't tag your videos the same. You try and circumnavigate the algorithms and things like that. I think we need to invest our resources. I'm a big supporter of the Globe Light Tour over in Europe, because I think that's a way that we cannot be censored. We have our channels, we have content, we have proofs plastered all over that camper van. It's going to go 14,000 miles in 78 days. YouTube cannot do anything about that.
No, that's true.
At least, for a while. I put everything on my website. That's where everything lives. If Google goes down, YouTube gets down, my channel gets taken down. I don't have any thought. I don't have delusions of grandeur. One day it's going to be gone. So I don't invest a lot of time in that as much anymore, because I realize that there's shadow banning and weird stuff going on. So stuff lives on my website now. So if YouTube goes down, stuff isn't embedded there where it's going to disappear. I still have a place that I think that we can store stuff, and I encourage everybody to get a place outside of YouTube to store their content and archive it at some level, so that still can be accessed some way, somehow.
And I think that's important, but understand that even push come to shove, ISPs, if they need to get the pressure, they will instantly pull the plug. I think we can't live in fear. We can't live that way. We've got to live based on what the mediums are. Do it. It takes one person at a time. It's not based on numbers and millions of people. That one person, like I said, the ripple effect. And honestly, we're called to do what we're doing. I think we should just move forward with the truth and not worry about what everyone's trying to do, because the devil tries stuff all the time, thwart the plan. But again, greater is he that is in us than he who is in the world. Right. And honestly, we'll be victorious regardless, because it is the truth, and it's representing the truth of the Bible and God. That's the amazing thing. It's representing that. So I always say, yeah, you can look at it one way and go, oh, this is depressing, I'm going down, or what's going to happen next year. But honestly, Doesn't matter. People are waking up to the truth. They're coming back to God. If one more person came back, that's great enough, but we get in this mentality where it's like numbers. I got to reach more people. But quite honestly, one person telling one person can reach more with the ripple effect than some YouTuber that's got 5,000 subscribers or they've got 50,000 subscribers. I always say there too, you can get into the danger of looking at subs. Subs don't mean anything. It's engagement. It's people that value your content. It has nothing to do with subs. Subs don't mean anything because right now you're just losing them 1,000, a month. It doesn't matter. Subs. It's the people that invest in it, changes their life. And I think that's what's beautiful about this topic. Literally, people's lives are being changed. Jake, did you see this on your journey that people's lives were literally being changed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think somebody coming to a worldview change literally has a different outlook on what they should be doing with their life. No longer is it just a self-serving type of experience, but rather, hey, if the Creator is real, if we are in a plane of existence that is unlike we've been told, first of all, we need to wake other people up, which is the common theme that I find with a lot of the Flat Earth community. We got to spread the information, and also, hey, that changes the way that we relate to one another because we're going to be held accountable. Because if God is real, if He created us, then we need to remember that we need to walk our lives out in a way that is reflective of Him. And I think that's something that really is life-changing about the Flat Earth movement. As people come into this belief, they really do strengthen their faith in the Scriptures and in the Bible and just their belief in God in general. And that calls them to a more genuine walk. It calls them to stop messing around if they've had things that they've been justifying because, if I'm an agnostic, maybe I can, get away with, doing this or that or this little vice or that little sin. But if God is real and He is invested in you and He's created this place for you, then that changes everything. That means we need to have a change in us to start to reflect the reality that people are starting to come to believe that they live in. And so that's really the life change that I've witnessed as I've been recording this movement.
And would you say, what would be the most shocking part, even in your journey, or maybe it could be something, deception, it could involve NASA, it could be something you read in the Bible, but I want to go through each one of you and go explaining, what was it that was really shocking. And again, it doesn't have to be biblical, it could be non-biblical, but it's not like a proof, we're talking about what made you believe the earth is flat. It's what you're shocked to learn.
Yeah.
That you thought was fact or reality, and you're like, wow, this wasn't even true.
I think some of the most interesting stuff is the very stuff that comes from NASA.org or their websites and government agency websites that is then being used to call them out on lies. And I think that's the most fascinating aspect of this, is because there are some real true researchers that are digging through the mud of information on the internet and information that we can get access to look for this stuff. And so to have it all in one concise place, at least something that'll get you started, was really important for me to build this story. And for example, it starts for a lot of people with the Apollo program. If you buy into the Apollo program and that we went to the moon in 1969, you're probably not yet ready for flat Earth. And I think whenever we look,
well, maybe we should have a debate on that. Gentlemen, do you think? No, go ahead.
And I think if we look at these programs and we look at the different evidences that people are drawing out of their footage and their imagery to debunk them, it's mind-blowing. And we're also coming into this age once again where they have the technology and the computing power and the graphics and the virtual reality stuff that we're not going to be able to pick apart the imagery that's going to come down the chute in the very near future. But we do live in a time where they didn't have Photoshop to the extent that they do now. And they definitely are going to be taking off these images and these videos that so many people have been using to call them out on their lie, and so, you know, the imagery, and also the last one I'll throw out is the actual official documentation is one of the most fascinating things to look at, where they use the terminology flat, non-rotating Earth, you know, an atmosphere that is non-moving. You know, these things being found in official aeronautics paperwork, NASA documents, United States Air Force, and these are the things that really make you scratch your head. Is if this is such a crazy movement, if the belief that the Earth is flat is so far out there, they sure do use the terminology a lot and the mathematics that require a flat, non-rotating Earth a lot in their aeronautical calculations and in the paperwork that talks about those things.
Wow, yeah, those are great ones. Pastor Nate, what was the most shocking thing you came across when it came to this topic that you learned, and it was just like, wow?
Well, you know, the idea that it's likely possible that stars are actually sentient beings, that they may be angels. I mean, you preach for 20-something years, you think you know the Bible. Well, I realized that I glazed over a lot of stuff. It never registered. You know, you were talking about it in your presentation tonight, how the fact that the Creator has named every star. And, you know, he didn't name all the Douglas fir trees in the forest, you know, but he named every star. And so biblically, that was powerful and something to consider. But then from a sociological perspective, what has blown me away is to see how widespread this topic has been covered in the media, right? And it's like, you know, it'd be one thing if a few different of the major networks, maybe 1 month, they mention, wow, you know, this thing seems to be affecting a lot of people. And, you know, they looked into it, they went to a conference, and, you know, maybe a few little shows that they did on it, a few media spots. But the fact that this has just continued, and they have to just continue to attack it, to try to mock it, to try to belittle, you know, all of our education, to say that we're crazy. To me, that shows that they recognize how many people are coming to this truth, and the fact that it's picking up steam.
Sure, yeah. Like I said in my presentation, they're not censoring UFO videos.
Exactly.
Ask the questions
Cat
why
videos.
and look into this. Cat videos. I'm just saying, the conspiracy realm, interesting that UFO are not being censored, right? I think it's something to look into. Obviously, with my presentation talking about the agenda and where this is leading, but cat videos, seriously.
Please censor cat videos.
Yeah. Please censor.
I end up watching them for an hour because they're so funny.
Over to you, Paul. What was the thing that just was like, what in the world? Like, you're still kind of like, what? Wait.
Two things came to mind just listening to these guys talk. The first one, from a biblical standpoint, was, and again, how do you miss this stuff? And you go back and read the scripture. You know, I mean, I grew up in the church, and, you know, youth group. I was president of my youth group, and I went, you know, I was bagging groceries at Thanksgiving at the mission. I mean, I was doing all that stuff, but I never spent time in the Word. You know, it was always what the preacher was saying, and, you know, we did a memory verse and that sort of thing. But it wasn't until, you know, the last couple of years when I would dive back into the scriptures and take it literally this time. Really, you know, like Rob Skiba was saying tonight, you know, praying, Holy Spirit, you know, please take the scale away from my eyes. If there's any preconceived notions that I'm bringing into this, please take those away so I'm ready to receive this. The throne of God is right here above us. You guys were talking about it when I was walking by. The throne of God is right here, right above us. He's close.
Yeah.
That was a foreign concept to me, because I grew up thinking that I'm not sure where God was, because I had all this space to deal with, and millions and billions of light years, and all this space. You know, they successfully pushed God away from us, you know, in our minds, you know, when we were very young. And so now thinking He's right there. He can. I always believed He could see us and know what we were thinking, but proximity wise now,
I know it changes.
It changes the game.
It changes.
And I like to think that I'm a lot more obedient now, because He's right there.
Yeah.
And it's more in the forefront of my mind.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. You know, there's so many things like what Jake talked about, you know, seeing the documents. That's crazy stuff.
Yeah. It
Crazy
just floors
stuff.
you.
But when it comes to, you know, my walk every day,
Sure.
thinking that the throne of God is right there.
Yeah.
I'm looking north. Here's the lake. So
Yeah.
he's right here.
Yeah.
You know,
He's
right
up
now.
there. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that just blows me away, day in and day out. My jaw is just hits.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly in conclusion, where I'm at. The one thing that, just shook me to the core. And to this day, I still think about it. And it's like, wow, man. But it was like, there's no space. And second, we're inside a dome. I mean, if you actually just let that sink in, space does not exist. And people are listening, they're like, what the heck is this guy talking about? But space, the construct, and what we've been taught does not exist. That might help you learn what flat earthers truly do believe, because I'm sure, like most on social media, you've all seen the memes, all these planets in the universe, and you got this flat pancake, flying around. Again, nobody believes that. Maybe Jake can talk a little bit about that, because I think this is an important discussion when it comes to, what do flat earthers believe? There's varying opinions, but there's a centrality. There's a common, I always say that we all agree that we're not a spinning ball flying through space, but there's certain things, that we don't at all adhere to. None of us, and like you brought up the Flat Earth Society. Well, I have yet to find anyone from the Flat Earth Society that even comes to my conferences. And furthermore, what does an organization being around 50 years and they don't have one meeting or a conference, and it takes some tall Canadian guy from, Canada to basically put on the very first Flat Earth conference? Something doesn't make sense at all. So again, we're always skeptical of the Flat Earth Society, but my point is, none of us believe in what's being depicted in all the memes, and I think it's important to address. And maybe you can comment in the film. Do you talk about that? And really, what do you think about that idea that the minute people hear flat Earth, people are listening right now, and they just tuned in and they hear flat Earth, and instantly they're just thinking of this pancake in space. Maybe you can explain how that is not at all what flat earthers believe.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing about the flat Earth model. Is the people that are coming to these conferences, that are making videos, that are doing their own research, it's really a conspiracy of what the Earth is not, rather than exactly what it is. And I think it's fascinating to see how it's more so debunking and deconstructing the theories and models that we are told are how reality is, that then leads people to say, okay, well, we know it's not this. We know it's not a heliocentric globular Earth model, and rather let's look at what we can observe. Let's look at how it might work in an alternative narrative. And so it's like this. It's so strange, because a lot of conspiracies, people throw out their assumptions, but really the flat Earth movement is based on first deconstructing the things we've been told, to prove, hey, it can't be this. It's not this, because we can't measure, we can't see, we can't find the curvature when we're trying to zoom in, and also, looking at the models and the theories that were presented, there are some issues with those that flat earthers are pointing out that can't be answered by a lot of these scientists. They don't even take the time to go into them, because there's some gaps in their theories. And yet today people will buy more into a scientist saying, "Hey, we have a multiverse, and it's like beer bubbles," which is something that is thrown out there. It's a funny thought, but people will buy that more than what they could actually observe.
I always say that Elon Musk can go on a TED Talk or up on stage, and he can say, "We're all a simulation." Everyone's clapping and applauding, but yet you say, "I think the Earth might be flat." Boo, boo, idiot, dumb. It's funny. Anything is accepted as long as it has the heliocentric cosmology attached to it. You ever notice that anything, even I explained this, even in a science fiction type of movie like The Matrix, they still were in space.
Yeah.
Notice that? Nothing gets outside of that paradigm. It always stays in with that paradigm. And I said, listen, wouldn't it be amazing for Hollywood just to come up with just some science fiction, just some fictional movie with a concept where everyone's kind of hanging out like this, and all of a sudden the sky, they learn that they're inside a dome. That would be profound. Can you imagine a big scale movie where all of a sudden everyone realizes instantly that everything they thought about the world wasn't true? I mean, that would be a cool concept. You think Hollywood would jump on it, but I found that they will only jump on something that has space still attached to it. Try to find a movie, a concept, anything that basically takes you out of a heliocentric Big Bang cosmology. You won't. And it's intriguing, because it would be one of the biggest blockbusters, as this, what? The world starts waking up one by one, and they're inside a thing, and there's like this guy that created them the whole time, just something along those lines. But they will not even entertain that in Hollywood. What do you think, Jake?
I did debate for many years, and there's this concept called a straw man argument, and it's often what we see with how the media represents the beliefs that are being talked about at these conferences. Now, don't get me wrong, there are crazy flat earthers that believe ridiculous stuff, but there are also rational, empirically minded flat earthers, and that is the vast majority of people I've run into at these conferences. And so, back on this topic of the straw man argument, if they put a flying saucer through space, you have 8 planets and 1 pancake, then the issue is
Pluto's not a planet.
I guess they got rid of Pluto.
That's right. Yeah,
But Pluto is on Pluto.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if they depict this as the belief, that is easily argued against. That is easily looked at as crazy. If they depict the beliefs as something that it's not, of course it's going to be looked at as crazy. And that's what we find with the vast majority of media today that people can find if they look up Flat Earth on YouTube is a inaccurate depiction of the beliefs that are actually being presented. And I feel like the reason that is because they don't want to touch the deconstructing aspect of the Flat Earth movement that breaks apart NASA or breaks apart government agencies, because who wants to touch that? That's a dangerous thing, because you're calling out the government. Well, if you get funded by the government, you probably don't want to do that. And so it's easier to prop up this straw man to argue against, rather than explain, hey, the reason they even are in this is because they can't trust these other aspects, and then these other conspiracies are found to be factual. Well, we don't want to talk about that on our station. We want to talk about how crazy flat earthers are and how it's ridiculous that somebody's buying into this, flat earth model of a pancake flying through outer space. Yeah. Flat earthers, they don't make claims in this movement unless they can really find them at least in the Word of God, or from something that they can observe in their own experiments, what people can see in high altitude weather balloon or balloons that are sent up to see, what does it look like the higher we get. And I think
without fisheye lenses.
Without fisheye lenses, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the fascinating thing about this is it's more so the things that build up to the overarching belief of flat Earth that can't be lost in this discussion. And I think that's the whole goal of flooding the media with all these dissenting voices, because they want you to not look into the underlying conspiracies that really turn out to be very, very convincing. And when you have them all together, then you can start to dabble in, hey, maybe the Earth is flat. Or let me throw my movie title, What If the Earth is Flat?
Nice segue. Even Logan Paul in his comedy movie, when he put that out, in the first 15 minutes, Mike, his friend, is telling a story where his friend at one point was stationed in Antarctica, and it was a tragic day when all of a sudden he heard this and his friend had fallen over the edge. And I bring that up because, again, this is another thing that in your journey, have you run into any flat earthers that believe they could fall over the edge?
Not one single person has told me they believe it's like Narnia and the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, where the boat could flow right over the edge of this giant waterfall into an endless abyss. Instead, the only thing that they claim is that, hey, we know that the known boundaries would be Antarctica, and the model would work similar to the UN logo map, and Antarctica being an ice ring around where we can't go beyond what is accessible. So there's no claims as to really what's beyond this ice wall. Yeah. But they're definitely not believing that there's some kind of edge to fall off of. We don't know how far down it goes. We don't know how deep it is. People have only drilled so far. So even on a globular model, it's all theory and guesswork as to what the core of the Earth is. And so it's the same with the flat Earth model. People can't just come out and come up with random stuff. They're just trying to go based off of what they can actually discover and prove as a factual thing in their own research.
So you're finding many people in the community are taking a more rational approach to this, using the scientific method. That's kind of been part of this entire journey for you, is just discovering that.
Yes. Whenever you come into this movement, the first thing you think is, oh, I'm going to run into a bunch of people that are just, play video games all day or in their mom's basement or whatever, who are too imaginative. But instead, you find pilots, you find engineers, you find working class Americans and people from all over the world who are really intelligent. And they're intelligent enough, at least, to understand that the government constantly lies to people because of many different motives and agendas, but they absolutely do. And they're intelligent enough to say, hey, if they lied to us once, they're going to lie again. But why are they lying? What is the purpose of the lie? And they eventually stumble into this movement, this flat Earth movement, because it's really the big lie. It's just this big conspiracy that involves all these other underlying conspiracies, and these people, they're not loonies, they're not crazy, they're just skeptical of a lot of things.
I always tell people that when it comes to this topic, and if you're just tuning in now, we are talking about flat Earth, and yes, we believe it's true. I just wanted to make that disclaimer, but I would say that there's two things that I think are really important. If you think this topic is crazy, there's two things. Look into the moon landing and look into Antarctica. Jake was talking a little bit about kind of depictions with the UN flag, and I wanted to kind of go around and talk to Pastor Nate and Paul on the plane as far as maybe elaborate. You take Antarctica, maybe something that is fascinating, that you found fascinating, and we'll get Paul with the moon landing that you think would be important, because I think that there are areas, and even in a discussion, if you just look into that, if that foundation is cracked a little bit, you'll be like, well, wait a minute, if they're lying about that, why? And if they can't do certain things, what can they do? It will open up those questions, and I think it's incredibly important because both the moon and both Antarctica are in there for sure in this discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it was fascinating to me, first of all, just on the biblical level. You have scripture that says he has compassed the waters. It says that, he has put boundaries around the seas to where the proud waves will stop, and you'll go this far and then no farther. So even the biblical, account tells us that we're not going to fall off the edge, right? But also, when I realized that, many explorers like Captain Cook and other people, they have ship logs of their travels, and they tried to, quote, sail around Antarctica, and they couldn't do it. They ended up tens of thousands of nautical miles, and yet they continued to be coming up against this ice shelf that was anywhere from 100 to 200 or more feet high, and, they just couldn't get around it. And so then you have the modern situation, Operation High Jump, in the 50s with Admiral James Byrd. And, they had to use helicopters and planes to get over that because they basically sailed to the ice wall and the ships couldn't go any further. So, I mean, you have these accounts and, Captain Cook and all these other people that did these things. There wasn't the censorship at that time. They just recorded what was true. They didn't understand, why do we have this data? Why have we sailed all these nautical miles? But because they were true explorers and they were seeking the truth about the nature of our world.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And just the very fact that no business, no organization, nobody can just go explore Antarctica. And even when you look into the Antarctica Treaty, it's absolutely fascinating. It's locked down. I mean, you can take a tour with a tour guide, but honestly, look into it and ask, why is there an agreement, a peace treaty put together with that many countries that's never been broken? Look around the world, man. No one stays, together intact for that long. That's very, very important when we bring up Antarctica. But also, we were talking about the moon landing, and who better to talk about it? The man that space is fake, and he's done incredible work on, exposing that. But maybe explain why it's important to look into that as an avenue to really go deeper, where the moon fits into this whole thing.
Yeah, the moon landing is, we kind of talked a little bit earlier. I think Jake brought it up. It's kind of I call it a litmus test, if you will, on somebody's level of indoctrination, I guess, I don't know, for the lack of a better phrase there, kind of finding out where they are with the moon landing story. And if they believe that 6 human beings traveled 250,000 miles, each way, and landed safely back on Earth, they're probably not going to be open to biblical cosmology maybe at this time. But if they are, could question the moon landings, then maybe they're ripe for some other truths about what has been the wool pulled over our eyes. In my opinion, the moon landings were what was shown to the world was what they shot here on Earth for their simulations. And I think the biggest proof of that was in my presentation today, and that is the color plates for the videos and all the photographs that we get at the beginning of those reels NASA has. They have a color plate, and they're all dated. And so the videos that we were told were shot on the moon, and the photographs that we were told were shot on the moon by the astronauts themselves have a color plate, and these things are dated a week to 10 days before the launches even happened for each of those missions. So it doesn't even line up. I mean, we're talking 10 days before they were even on the moon that there's evidence that these things were shot even before they launched. So I tell people, you got to check out the moon landings, because it's very easy. I think if they really want to know the truth and they really want to, I think it's very easy to find all of the problems online between what NASA told us, what we were shown, and what really exists in the documents, in the photos, in the images, in the videos. It just doesn't reconcile. So I think, again, somebody is really willing to investigate that is going to come to a very quick conclusion that the moon landings were something that was staged. It was simulation that they shot, and this is what the world was shown and told that this is what happened on the moon.
Yeah, no, it's excellent points. And like I said, with both of those, topics, there's such a mountain of evidence. It's not like one thing. It just goes. I mean, you've done a whole series. I mean, how many things does it take? And it's important for people to really look into what we're talking about. Antarctica, also the moon landing. I know it seems crazy. Of course, they landed on the moon, you're saying, but honestly, just look into it, because you might be floored in what you find. In closing, I want to ask Jake, why do you think, after your journey, why do you think this is important, and why is it important for people to watch What If the Earth Was Flat?
Yeah, and I like to narrate the film in a way that comes across as unbiased. I don't really come out and say, hey, I'm a flat earther and you should believe this right at the start. Instead, it's more a journey of understanding, so that people that are not flat earthers can watch and become educated on how people have been drawn into the movement, how it has exploded as a whole, and also what it means for specifically Christians today when it comes to the censorship of Christian beliefs. So you can be a Christian and not be a flat earther and gain intellectual value from this film, in the fact that, hey, if they're going to start to censor flat earth beliefs, which a lot of people are finding credence in the scriptures to support it, are your views like a 6-day creation or challenging evolution or believing in a worldwide flood going to be looked at as uneducated and possibly dangerous in the future as well? This is kind of the importance of this topic, to talk about, hey, everybody should be able to have a voice when it comes to, challenging the powers that be that we see have been deceptive in the past. Because there's something that's called a great deception coming one day that the scripture talks about. And unless you're able to have that conversation, then people are going to buy into whatever it is we're presented with in the near future, when we're not able to pick it apart anymore. And I think that's the value. We need to be able to have this conversation, because it's the mark of an educated mind to entertain a matter without accepting it. And I think that's why you got to give it a chance. You got to understand it. And instead of watching all the videos that are just dissenting voices of media that's covered the event to just jump on the viral trend, instead, I hope my film presents a different perspective. One that, while not so biased, it presents an undissenting voice. So whenever we talk about this flat earth topic, we got to look into it, because we don't want to sweep away all the things that build up to it, because really it's changed so many people's perspectives on the world, perspectives on trusting government agencies, perspectives on the Word of God. And so when it comes to this topic, I hope you guys find value in this film. I hope you enjoy it when you get to watch it. And really, I'm just happy that people are going to get to see what I've been covering over the past 2.5 years,
Nice.
and understanding why people have become flat earthers, why people believe this earth is flat. And I hope that's of value in itself.
Awesome. And real quick, where can people get to watch the movie? It released today, which is really exciting that we're doing the show. The movie just released today. And where can they see it?
Yes, you can find it at NYSTV.org. One more time, NYSTV.org. And if you use the promo code Flat Earth, all under caps and one word, you can get a month free to watch the film, to be able to look at some of our other content, and maybe share it out. So that if you're a flat earther and you want somebody to kind of understand the movement, or if you're not a flat earther and you want other people to understand, why this is blown up in such the viral trend that it has, then share it out there. Please help get the word out. What If the Earth is Flat is out on NYSTV.org.
Awesome. Well, it was so great having you on, Jake. So exciting about the release of your first documentary film. It's going to be incredible. I know it's going to do well, and it's such a great voice to have out there. And following that journey and really looking at this, honestly, it's going to be amazing. Thanks so much for playing.
Don't miss Celebrate Truth with Robbie Davidson and Pastor Nate every Saturday, 7 to 9 Pacific, 10 to midnight Eastern on Revolution Radio. They talk the Bible and how it exposes a lot of lies in the world with special guests, roundtable discussions, and call-ins from you, the listeners. This is not your typical Christian radio show. Celebrate Truth with Robbie Davidson and Pastor Nate every Saturday from 7 till 9 p.m. Pacific, 10 midnight Eastern on Revolution Radio.